The Hebrew word Lilith appears in Isaiah 34 verse 14, a prophecy against the kingdom of Edom. The King James Bible translates the term as screech owl. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest. Some scholars have described Lilith as meaning night monster, called as wife of Lucifer, although different translations give different explanations for the terms they use. After the books located in the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament, the Torah, the wisdom literature books, etc., a variety of other Jewish books on religion were written. Some of these books are considered pseudepigrapha, some are folklore, and some are commentaries on the Hebrew Bible. Jewish sources refer to Lilith. The Gemara section of the Babylonian Talmud, a rabbinic commentary on Judaism, mentions Lilith various times, often depicting her as the worst example of a rebellious woman or embodying problematic female traits. This image is maintained in other sources, with Lilith often described as having children with monsters, manipulating children, and associated with disease and sexual immorality. Why isn't Lilith in the Bible? Assuming that Isaiah 34's word Lilith isn't connected to the character Lilith, there are no references to Lilith in the Bible. The simple answer to why the Bible doesn't feature Lilith is that she doesn't appear in the book of Genesis, which is the Bible's account of the earth's creation and of Adam and Eve. Scholars have debated the extent to which Genesis' creation account is allegorical. However, conservative theologians have maintained that Adam and Eve were real people and that the story of Adam and Eve's sin in the Garden of Eden is a historical account. In contrast to Adam and Eve, Lilith is a folklore character added later. The Babylonian Talmud wasn't written until 300 to 600 AD, and scholars estimate the alphabet of Ben Sira was written at the earliest in 700 AD. Some scholars have argued that Lilith appears in, or is informed by ancient Near Eastern mythologies and folklore, such as Lilu, an Akkadian word for a spirit that has demonic associations. Regardless of whether Lilith appears in these stories, she has the qualities of a mythological character rather than a historical person. The history of Lilith. Although the figure of Lilith is commonly found in Jewish folklore and midrash, the origin of Lilith is as a Sumerian succubus. The first Jewish story of Lilith was told in the alphabet of Ben Sira. Before the introduction of the alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith was mostly seen as a demoness instead of the first Eve. Due to the ambiguity of Lilith, she has been represented in multiple forms in both literature and art. Some theological scholars acknowledge Lilith as the first Eve, while others still see her as a demoness. Historically in art, Lilith has been portrayed variously, ranging from risque versions to Lilith in the garden. Lilith and the biblical story of creation. The biblical book of Genesis contains two contradictory accounts of humanity's creation. The first account is known as the priestly version and appears in Genesis 1 verse 26 and 27. Here, God fashions man and woman simultaneously when the text reads, "So God created mankind in the divine image, male and female God created them." The second account of creation is known as the Yahwistic version and is found in Genesis 2. This is the version of creation that most people are familiar with. God creates Adam, then places him in the Garden of Eden. Not long afterwards, God decides to make a companion for Adam and creates the animals of the land and sky to see if any of them are suitable partners for the man. God brings each animal to Adam, who names it before ultimately deciding that it is not a suitable helper. God then causes a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and while the man is sleeping, God fashions Eve from his side. When Adam awakes, he recognizes Eve as part of himself and accepts her as his companion. Not surprisingly, the ancient rabbis noticed that two contradictory versions of creation appear in the book of Genesis, which is called Bereshit in Hebrew. They solved the discrepancy in two ways. The first version of creation actually referred to Adam's first wife, first Eve. But Adam was displeased with her, so God replaced her with a second Eve that met Adam's needs. The priestly account describes the creation of an androgyne, a creature that was both male and female. This creature was then split into a man and a woman in the Yahwistic account. Although the tradition of two wives, two Eves, appears early on, this interpretation of creation's timeline was not associated with the character of Lilith until the medieval period, as we shall see in the next section. According to the alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith was Adam's first wife, but the couple fought all the time. They didn't see eye to eye on matters of sex because Adam always wanted to be on top while Lilith also wanted a turn in the dominant sexual position. When they could not agree, Lilith decided to leave Adam. She uttered God's name and flew into the air, leaving Adam alone in the Garden of Eden. God sent 3 angels after her and commanded them to bring her back to her husband by force if she would not come willingly. But when the angels found her by the Red Sea, they were unable to convince her to return and could not force her to obey them. Eventually, a strange deal is struck, wherein Lilith promised not to harm newborn children if they are protected by an amulet with the names of the 3 angels written on it. Why is Lilith controversial? On one level, Lilith is controversial because she's a folklore character from a folklore take on the creation story from Genesis. Her story takes us directly into debates about mythology versus history, sacred texts, and non-sacred editions. This can become quite heated discussions, especially when it comes to debating the Bible's accuracy. On another level, Lilith is controversial because her story is about sexual activity and female roles in marriage and family. In the Ben Sira story, Lilith leaves Adam because she desires something she associates with sexual equality, and in the story, God punishes her by having her lose children. The writer of Ben Sira seems to see Lilith as a willful wife who wants to be in charge, refuses to submit, and becomes a whore of Babylon figure. Many of us today wouldn't see the thing Lilith wanted as a problem of equality, just a private matter to be worked out between her and Adam. Thus, the story shows a different cultural understanding of female agency and sexual equality, which are intimate subjects no matter what view you take. Why should we know about Lilith? While Lilith may be most important in the context of folklore studies, there are at least 2 important reasons why we should know about her. First, we need to affirm that there is a difference between the original story and folklore changes that come later. Understanding why Lilith is fictional helps us affirm that even if we think there are symbolic elements in Genesis, it has a core of truth that is not found in fictional alternate histories. Recognizing the difference between Genesis and later traditions is important if we want to be biblically literate Christians who appreciate the difference between a holy text, non-sacred editions, commentaries, and so forth. Second, Lilith is part of a larger debate about Abrahamic religions versus paganism or neo-paganism. Scholars know that Christianity and Judaism both have positive examples of female leadership, but on the popular level, people often characterize Abrahamic religions with controlling women. In that context, people sometimes argue that paganism or heretical Christian movements are better because they present different gender roles, female goddesses, sexual liberation, and so forth. Lilith initially seems like a perfect example of this idea, a woman desiring sexual equality who gets punished for it. Looking at the story in context, the fact Lilith bears demon children and is promiscuous shows she's not such a clean-cut character. The same can be said of many female goddesses in pagan religions, such as Kali, the Hindu goddess of love and death. Female mythological and folklore characters are more complex than many realize. Understanding Lilith in all her complexity helps us answer and avoid easy stereotypes about paganism and Christianity. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment your opinion.